Hello and welcome to this review of O Group. I thought I'd do a proper review of it. I've done a couple of, me learning how to play the game videos already. I've also played quite a few games of it now, so I think I've got a relatively good handle of the game itself and how it works and the kind of things you'd be looking for. O Group, if you don't know, is a battalion-sized game from Reiswitz Press, which is the sister company of the Two Fat Lardies. Written by Dave Brown. I think his son Christopher also had considerable input into it as well, from the amount of questions he's answering over on the Facebook O Group page, which is great to see. And it deals with battalion-sized gaming. And what this means is basically you are abstracting a lot of the figures on the table down to they're becoming multiple men rather than single individual figures. So if you're used to things like maybe IAB Shot Mum or even Chain of Command or Bolt Action, it's a very different way of gaming. It's a very different way of looking at the table and the forces therein. So I'm going to talk really in this, I'm not going to talk too much about the actual rules themselves because, as I say, I've gone into quite a lot of detail on my first play O Group video, which you can see on this channel. Also I talk about rules and things in some of the other playthroughs as well. I don't know if they're going to be released by the time this video comes out, but they'll certainly be on the channel at some point in the future, and I'm going to be playing more O Group in the future anyway, so you'll be able to see how the game actually plays. What I want to have a look at really today is the rules themselves, take a few of the bits and pieces that I really like, also have a bit of a gripe about things as well, but there's not much of that, to be perfectly honest. O Group, in my opinion, really speaks to me, largely because another game that I played for years is this, Rapid Fire, which I know has recently been redone. I've got the Rapid Fire reloaded version as well, but this is my old copy of Rapid Fire. I've got the original first edition Rapid Fire Kick Command. I played this for about 20 years. This is a battalion level game as well. So I'm well used to the abstraction of battalion command that comes with O Group. However, there's a massive difference between Rapid Fire and between O Group in that Rapid Fire is very much, this is not going to be a video about Rapid Fire, but it's very much an old school feel of a game where you have very obvious phases throughout the turn. So you have a morale phase, and then you have a movement phase, a fire phase, and then you have a reserve movement phase. And that is very obvious. You can do everything that you want to do in those turns unless you're interrupted by the enemy during your movement, and there is no restrictions whatsoever to any of the figures moving or firing or anything like that unless you can't see enemy, that kind of thing. So from that point of view, Rapid Fire is it's by the time I'd finished playing it, which is a few years ago now, really, we'd kind of changed it so much that it didn't really resemble the original Rapid Fire anyway. We had an activation done by cards, similar to a lot of the Lardy games, like IMP Shot Mum or Sharp Practice or Infamy, and we also had we'd actually reduced the firing table down into rolling buckets of dice, which we preferred. Now, O Group kind of tackles a lot of those problems that we had with Rapid Fire head on, and really, I think, does a great deal of service towards this level of gaming, with some really nice additions that just give you that feel of command, of not being able to do everything you want to do. This is really where it comes down to the orders. Each turn both players will roll dice to see how many orders they have, how many company orders and how many headquarters orders, and also if there's any issues like any hesitant troops. And this it means that you can only order a certain amount of units per turn, and you are then forced into making command decisions as to what is the best thing to do with the available orders. And if you just keep piling them into a forlorn hope, then you're wasting your turn. You've really got to think about tactically and strategically on the board where you want those orders to go. And what it does, it kind of creates an almost a cinematic feel to the game, in that you'll see where action starts to develop and also where both sides are probably pushing orders in and pushing units in to try to force a particular decision on that particular part of the table. And that I really like, because you're not just then just thinking, right, if this bit doesn't work, I can throw these in. You've got to think, right, I need this bit to work so I can throw these in, because I don't want to keep stacking orders up just to do this thing. Whereas with, say for instance, rapid fire or a lot of other traditional war games, because you're able to move all of your figures and all of your tanks and all of your whatever support in one turn, you can basically, you know, just force your way through. It just feels more like a battering ram than a little bit more subtle in O Group. The other thing with O Group as well, which I've not seen in any other games really, is the patrol, combat patrols, which are basically they're meant to be little scout units that you don't actually put them on the table except as tokens, and these can scout out areas. They can be used to spot enemy troops. They can be used to push forward, and you can also use them deceptively as well. So they're almost like blinds in I Ain't Been Shot Mum, dummies if you want them to be, but you can also deploy your actual fighting units onto them as well. And that I think is really innovative. It's really interesting way of going about having what is basically the patrol phase for chain of command, but at an abstracted level where you're not actually moving those individual markers about as you would do in chain of command. It can confuse your enemy. It can get them thinking that the attack is coming in one particular area, so you can use it as a ruse. And you can do all kinds of things with those if you really want to, if you're pushing it with 2 players or more, and it just adds to that fog of war as well. The other thing I like as well about O Group, very much so, is that the rules are very pared down. Now I'm going to say, it's battalion level, so we're dealing with units that are made up of each section is probably represented by 2 or 3 men on a small base. I use Flames of War bases, the small bases. 3 of those to a company, 3 companies to a platoon. Three sections to a platoon, three platoons to a company, and then 3 companies to the battalion. And each of those also has a company commander as well. So you're talking basically 10 stands of infantry in each company, so probably 30 in total in your battalion, and then you also have support options as well on top of that, but your minimum will be about 30. Now the abstraction is each section, as I say, I represent it by either 2 or 3 men on a base, and to some people they probably don't really, if you've played a lot of skirmish games, it might be difficult to actually set your head into thinking that those 3 men actually represent somewhere between 8 and even 12 men, and also they have all their integrated anti-tank weapons and also bits and pieces as well. So just to think, to put your head into that kind of thinking may be a bit difficult if all you've played is one-on-one skirmish games, but this it's something that I like. I like the abstraction of that command, where you're not really thinking about what those soldiers are doing individually, just the fact that they are where they are on the table, and basically that they are going to be doing what they're supposed to be trained to do, which is fighting the enemy, obviously. So I like that. Some people probably don't like it, but I think it's a very easy hurdle to get over once you've actually thought about it a little bit, and it's a major part of O Group. Like for instance, each tank is represents somewhere between about 4 and 5 tanks really. It's not an individual tank. So that's some of the great things about it, I think, is the abstraction, the fact that you have to really think about where your orders are going to go on the table. You can play it easily on a 6-foot by 4-foot table. It has some very nice things like having reserves and also having a basic battle plan as part of the game as well, which means that you're forcing your forces towards a particular goal, for capturing areas and consolidating them and things, and also then for bringing on reserves later. The artillery is handled very well. And all support is also handled very well as well. I don't know if this would fall into the category of big game I suppose it would if you're using 30 stands of figures each with 30 figures on, so you're talking at least about 100 figures per side, which, you know, sounds like a lot when you say it out loud, but it's not particularly difficult. You could easily buy a box of Plastic Soldier Company's figures, put them on bases. There's about 150 figures in each of those boxes, so you'd only use about a third of the box to actually create your O Group battle group anyway. The anti-tank rules are very simple, very easy. You see if you can spot the enemy, you see if you can hit them. You need a 7 or above on 2d6 with a couple of modifiers, and then you also roll damage, and basically it's the armour value versus the anti-tank value of the gun. This again is relatively similar to rapid fire, but in rapid fire there is only 6 categories of anti-tank gun, there's only 6 categories of armour. So in some cases I know I've played in a rapid fire where we've had tanks literally unable to penetrate the armour of their opponent unless their opponent was stopped, the tank was behind them at close range. This is not something that happens in O Group. You will always, in most cases at least, shock the enemy tank, because, you know, an anti-tank round bouncing off, the tank crew don't really know inside that tank if it's able to penetrate their armour or not. So it kind of works for that, really. You know, they would still be surprised by a round spranging off their tank. The combat itself is good. Another really nice innovative part of O Group that I really like is the spotting dice. You don't actually spot the enemy. If they're obscured, like in woods or in buildings, you add an extra dice to your firing and you spot them on a 4, 5 or a 6. Most rolls in O Group are 4, 5 or a 6 is a success. There's differences for, you know, better troops like elite and things like that, veterans, but in general most troops will fire and hit on a 4, 5 or 6. They will spot, and I like the spotting dice. Helps when you are when you're firing, you roll your spotting dice first of all, and that determines how well the opponent will survive their morale roll. They do a morale roll as a save test. They generally need a 4, 5 or 6 if they're spotted, but if they're still obscured then they need a 3, 4, 5 or a 6. So it's literally a very simple way of doing a saving roll, and it's all combined into one instead of having a separate spotting phase like you kind of do again, you know, to go back to rapid fire. I don't want to bash rapid fire too much, but to go back to rapid fire, because it's the game that I know at the same level as O Group, where I can bounce it off of. There's a spotting phase in rapid fire. There isn't in O Group. It's actually part of your firing, and it's the same as with anti-tank firing as well. So there's really nice little innovative parts of the game like that really stand out to me, and as I say, the actual rules, although this is a thick book and it's 106, 108 pages long, it's got a lot of it you can hold in your head, and looking at it when you first start to read it you think, how am I going to get that in my head? But I'm about 3 or 4 games in now, and the real core rules are really settled in my head. It's pretty simple. I just have to check this book every so often now. Obviously the first game it was, you know, flicking through it every turn almost. Now I'm not. I'm pretty much able to hold these rules very easily in my head, because most of it is a 4, 5 or a 6 is a success, or 7+ is a success. There's a couple of things, like artillery is a little bit more complicated. I'm just going to show you here on these are the quick reference sheets. There are only 4 sheets of quick reference rules, which is great, which is fantastic. And the artillery firing is just slightly more complicated in that you have to do, first of all, you have to do an accuracy roll to see if you're, well, no, first of all you have to actually decide, when you're doing artillery, mortars are relatively simple, but if you're doing artillery you have to decide if you're going to ask for regimental or divisional support. Then you have to roll on that table, then you have to roll on the table for the accuracy, then you have to roll for the hits. So it's quite a lot to roll in for the artillery, but artillery isn't a massive part of it really, because you generally only get, as an attacker you'll get 3 fire missions, as a defender you'll get 2 fire missions. So throughout the entire game you're probably only rolling those charts anyway, at the maximum probably 3 times. You may get more depending on the scenario, but generally you're getting 3. So it's not such a big issue really. It's not like every turn that you're having to refer to the charts. Now the rules themselves are incredibly clearly written. As a book, it's a really nice read. Everything is laid out perfectly well. Each of the sections are clearly marked. You can jump to them. I mean, I've put in post-it notes, but I do that anyway with rules just so I can jump straight to the section. But they are incredibly clearly marked. Unfortunately, with the first edition, the page numbers are actually printed on the inside of the spine. This apparently is a publisher issue, as cleared up by Lardy Rich. People have said, is it because we've got an advert here at the front? He said it wasn't. It's something to do with the printers themselves. They'd actually made a bit of a mess of that. But any later printings of this will have the numbers on the outside. I got around it by literally writing them on the corner, so I can just jump to them. One good thing is, one of the many good things is it does have an index, a big, again, clear index, so you can jump straight to the part that you need. It has an introductory scenario at the end. I think I probably would have liked to have seen some more scenarios in the book itself, just maybe 2 or 3, just a couple of different ones. I can understand the need for space, and I can understand the requirements when it comes to publishing and just trying to keep page numbers down, because there's a lot. We do have optional rules in there which I've yet to use, so but there's not a great deal of extra optional rules. Most of it's pretty simple stuff. There's also battle groups as well for even bigger games if that's what you're interested in. I mean, as I say, it's a relatively big game anyway, with 100 figures a side plus. The layout is really nice and clear. I'm not very keen on rules that have a coloured background on their rules. This is black and white, makes it nice and easy to read. All the tables are clear. They're all different colour coded, so you can actually read them very simply, very easily. The only thing I'm going to say here, and what I'm going to bring on to, is the quick reference sheets. Now on here, because they've obviously gone for space to try to get these down onto 2, some of these charts can be a little bit confusing to read. I find them hard to read, but I think as I get used to it, it's going to get easier and easier to see what I'm looking for. But I just think there's a few little bits and pieces, just slightly. Like for example here, the artillery accuracy, it says 10 plus critical hit, 7 plus zeroed in, 6 to 3 harassing. I would have put that probably the other way around, so 3 to 6, and then just going from left to right incrementally. But that's just the way I work, and that's just I read things easier that way. Other people are different. As I said, it's an incredibly minor point for what is ultimately an excellent game and an excellent layout. One thing I would say about this particular set of rules, and I think really, to be honest, it could be a criticism that's levelled a little bit at Lardy games in general, is that they assume that you have a prior knowledge of the period. Although this goes to great pains to explain the battalion and the makeup of it, and it does provide a battalion sheets for Britain, America, Germany and the Soviet Union. There are a few terms here and there that are just used throughout that it just thinks that the person that's picked this up and is playing this is already familiar with organisation in the Second World War and also the Second World War history as well. And as I say, this is something that I kind of find a little bit with Lardy rules, but again, I completely understand why they don't put in full histories. It being possible, and also they have enough supplements anyway that you can actually pick that kind of history up from those. What I'd like to see with O Group is more supplements. I'd like to see the development of any kind of campaign gaming with it, which would be interesting, because it is it is very much a standalone game. It's a one-off. As it stands, you could quite easily make any campaigns out of it, but currently as it stands, it is, you know, battalion versus battalion, which in itself will be strange in a that the same battalion is always fighting against the same battalion in a campaign anyway. So, you know, I can understand that. It's, you know, the size of the game in itself is a bit of a campaign. But yeah, I think that's really probably about the only negatives I can think about it, really, is just, like I said, the lack of a historical background. So for a newcomer into wargaming, into historical wargaming, it might they may be pretty confused as to what they're dealing with from a point of view of history. But the exact same criticism can be laid at things like rapid fire anyway. So, you know, it's no real difference to that, really. And there's plenty of histories on the Second World War. I mean, you know, you can watch Netflix documentaries to get the history background if you really want. So I think that's really as much as I can say about it at the moment. I've only really played solo. I'm looking forward to playing it against a human opponent, just so I can see how the combat patrols and things work in it as well. And I'm looking forward to introducing my friends to it as well as a game, because I think they'll really like it, because we've all been big fans of rapid fire for years, and I think this will be a great replacement for rapid fire. So if you've enjoyed this review of O Group, I do suggest you go and check it out on the Two Fat Lardies website. It is available in various shops across the internet and various wargaming shops, but I'd suggest getting it from the publisher themselves. They provide a great service, and I'm not paid to say that, but they do, and they also provide tokens as well and all other kinds of support for the game. So you're probably just better off just going straight to the Two Fat Lardies and get it from there. Well, thank you for listening to this. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any comments, leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer them as much as I can. If there's anything I haven't covered that you think I needed to mention, please let me know. Also, if you've enjoyed it, then please do subscribe. Check out the Wargaming blog. Check me out on Twitter. And thanks for listening.